Welcome to ESI Africa Insights. For this episode, I am speaking with Richard Nelson, who is the coordinator at Power Africa. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Richard, let's start off with a little bit about your background. Based on your extensive career experience, what developments are you most excited about in the energy market?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on this morning. And I've been with Power Africa now for just a few months. I was with Power Africa before, several years ago, and was able to get a good view of what Power Africa is doing around the continent. I'm now coming back to it as the coordinator and am just now meeting with partners, getting around the continent to get a feel for what's happening. And what I'm seeing so far is really exciting. Just in the past few weeks, I've heard about several different innovations that I think could be impactful for the power sector in Africa. One of those is a floating solar hydro facility in Ghana that we've been supporting. And it really does sort of open up a new frontier of being able to use solar in a water environment with that combination of technology. Another company I met with recently is developing sort of extra capacitors and battery storage, which could really be transformative around the continent. So we're excited to see what that leads to. And then another one, just this week I've heard about, is a new type of carbon filament for transmission lines that actually doubles the capacity, which could have huge repercussions in places like South Africa or other places where capacity is constrained.
You've mentioned quite a few important points there, the solar, the fact that it's combined with hydropower, which is predominantly used in the African market, and also transmission lines. It's so important to be able to transmit the increased power capacity that we are seeing. So what is the direction in terms of Power Africa and climate finance? We see that it's shifting from carbon markets to green bonds. Where do you see Power Africa fitting in that market?
Yeah, that's an extremely relevant question right now, as everyone is trying to figure out the right solution to access the climate finance resources that are being made available around the world. We have been very active in the carbon market space from Power Africa's standpoint, but also the USAID has been active in trying to develop carbon markets to try and help companies and different initiatives around the continent access the carbon markets by generating carbon credits and by getting revenue from those credits. There has been some mixed success there. I know we supported Absa Bank in doing some carbon credits, and it was only taken up very, very lightly, actually. It wasn't quite as successful as we were all hoping. So we are also looking at the green bond space as well, and we have been doing some work there, looking at ways that we could support that. There have been a few that have been issued, and it seems promising. So we are going to continue to explore those opportunities.
It is new ground for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it's a level of sophistication and involves partners that may be new to the Africa energy space. And so that's an area where I think we can bring in some of those resources to do that kind of analysis, to try and establish the risk environment, help the risk environment be conducive to those types of bonds. And that'll involve working with governments around the continent. One of the things that has always been the case, that is especially important now, is to ensure that we have buy-in from African governments. There has to be political will to be able to advance the power sector in these respective countries. There really has to be that political will, this agreement, this intentionality on doing whatever it takes to actually advance the power sector. And when we see that happening, that opens up opportunities for investment for the private sector and for real progress to be made.
And as you mentioned, Power Africa has had quite a few successes on the continent, and the organization has been around since 2013. So building on the success, what is the focus for this year?
That's a great question. We are demand driven. So in some sense, we follow what the private sector is telling us. Our goal is to use the combined resources of 12 different agencies of the US government, along with 22 other development partners, bilateral and multilateral, to support the private sector to be able to be successful in developing these deals, whether it's generation, transmission, or even setting up a private utility, as is the case in Burundi right now. And so, to some extent, we follow what the market is telling us. However, one of the areas that we're seeing increasing need for, and this is no secret, is the limitations that the transmission network around the continent present. And so we're going to be looking more closely at that to see what else we can do to help open up some of these cross-border trading opportunities through the power pools by accelerating the interconnectors between countries, for example, like Angola or Namibia or other places in Western and Eastern Africa. And I think that if we can do that, that'll allow a lot more of the free flow of electrons between places that have overcapacity and undercapacity, which everyone's been working toward for a long time. We don't believe we're the first to think of this at all, but this has been a priority of ours ever since we launched the transmission roadmap about 5 years ago. But a lot of that is happening. And so now we need to take a fresh look at the Continental Master Plan that the AU has developed and figure out ways to actually accelerate that.
That's a very important focus that Power Africa has, especially since we're looking at the Free Trade Continental Agreement. We're looking at the African single market for energy. So you're on the right track there.
Right. I think it's critical, and it's coming. I think there's so much promise here around the continent, and we're just excited to be a part of it. We're excited to be expanding our network to as many private sector companies as we can, and really solidify that partnership we have to be able to find the solutions that Africa needs.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. Tune in for the next video and have a powerful day.